What if I told you that one of the greatest geniuses in human history was once considered an ordinary child? What if I told you that a young boy who struggled to fit into traditional classrooms would one day unlock secrets of the universe that had puzzled humanity for centuries? Today, the name Albert Einstein is recognized across the world. His face appears in textbooks. His theories transformed modern science, and his name has become a symbol of intelligence itself. But behind the fame and revolutionary discoveries lies a story that very few people truly know. It is the story of curiosity, the story of persistence, and the story of a man who never stopped asking questions. This is not just the journey of a scientist, it is the journey of a dreamer who dared to think differently, a man who challenged accepted beliefs and changed humanity's understanding of reality forever. So stay with us until the end, because this remarkable story may inspire you to see the world and your own potential in a completely new way. Let's begin. Hello everyone, and welcome back to English Orbit, the channel where inspiring stories help you improve your English while learning valuable life lessons. A man whose discoveries changed our understanding of space, time, energy, and the universe itself. This is the incredible story of Albert Einstein. As you listen, focus on the vocabulary, pronunciation, and sentence structure. This story is designed to improve your English listening skills while introducing you to one of history's greatest minds. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. The boy who saw the world differently, a child born into an ordinary family. Albert Einstein was born on March 14, 1879, in the city of Ulm, Germany. At the time, nobody could have imagined that this small, quiet child would one day become one of the most famous scientists in human history. His parents, Hermann Einstein and Pauline Einstein, were ordinary people living a modest life. His father was an engineer and businessman who worked hard to provide for his family. His mother loved music and education and believed strongly in the importance of learning. Albert was not born into wealth. He did not grow up with special privileges, and there was certainly no sign that he would one day become a symbol of genius around the world. Like millions of children, he began life as an ordinary boy in an ordinary family. Yet hidden behind his quiet personality was a mind that would eventually change the world. A quiet and thoughtful child, from a very young age, Albert seemed different from other children. He was quiet, very quiet. While many children enjoyed running around and making noise, Albert often preferred sitting alone and thinking. His parents noticed that he spent long periods observing things around him. He was fascinated by small details that most people ignored. He wanted to understand how things worked, why the sky looked the way it did, why objects moved, why certain events happened. His curiosity appeared endless. Many children asked questions. Albert seemed to live through questions. Almost everything he saw inspired another mystery in his mind. Sometimes adults became tired of answering him, but Albert could not stop wondering. He wanted explanations, not simple answers, real explanations. This desire to understand the world would become one of the defining characteristics of his life. The compass that changed his life. When Albert was around 5 years old, something happened that would leave a lasting impression on him. One day, his father showed him a small pocket compass. At first, it seemed like a simple object, but Albert quickly noticed something extraordinary. No matter how he turned the compass, the needle always pointed in the same direction. He rotated it again. The needle moved back. He turned it upside down. The needle corrected itself again and again. The same thing happened. Albert was amazed. What invisible force was moving the needle? Why did it behave that way? How could something unseen control an object? For most children, the compass would have been a brief curiosity. For Albert, it became an obsession. Years later, he would describe this moment as one of the most important experiences of his childhood. The compass revealed something powerful. It showed him that there were invisible forces in nature, forces that existed even when people could not see them. This realization sparked a lifelong fascination with the mysteries of the universe. School was not what he expected. When Albert began attending school, he quickly discovered that he did not enjoy traditional education. The schools of that era were very strict. Students were expected to sit quietly, memorize information, follow rules without asking questions, and repeat facts exactly as teachers presented them. Albert disliked this approach. He wanted to understand ideas, not memorize them. He wanted to ask questions, not simply accept answers. Unfortunately, many teachers viewed his behavior as challenging. They preferred students who followed instructions without questioning authority. Albert often asked difficult questions, questions that disrupted lessons, questions that required deeper thinking. As a result, some teachers misunderstood him. They saw him as stubborn. Others believed he lacked discipline. One teacher reportedly told him that he would never amount to much. Imagine hearing those words as a child. Imagine being told that your future held little promise. For many people, such criticism would have destroyed their confidence. But Albert continued believing in his curiosity. Deep inside, he knew there was nothing wrong with asking questions. A love for mathematics. Although Albert struggled with certain aspects of school, there was one subject he absolutely loved: mathematics. Numbers fascinated him. Patterns fascinated him. Logic fascinated him. Unlike many students, Albert did not view mathematics as difficult. He viewed it as beautiful. To him, mathematics was a language capable of explaining the universe. When he encountered mathematical problems, he became excited. He enjoyed solving puzzles. He enjoyed discovering patterns, and he enjoyed finding solutions. As he grew older, he began studying advanced mathematics on his own. Often, he learned concepts years before they were introduced in school. He read books independently. He explored topics beyond the classroom, and he constantly challenged himself with new ideas. His love for mathematics became one of the foundations of his future success. Discovering science. As Albert entered his teenage years, his curiosity expanded beyond mathematics. He became fascinated by science, particularly physics. Physics attempts to explain how the universe works, why objects move, how energy behaves, and what laws govern nature. For Albert, these questions were irresistible. He spent hours reading scientific books. He studied theories developed by famous scientists, and he imagined possibilities that most people never considered. One question fascinated him more than any other: what would happen if a person could travel alongside a beam of light? The question seemed strange, perhaps even impossible, but Albert couldn't stop thinking about it. Again and again, he imagined chasing a beam of light through space. What would he see? How would light behave? Would the laws of physics remain the same? At the time, he had no idea that this simple thought experiment would eventually help him develop one of the most important scientific theories in history: feeling different from others. Albert often felt different from his classmates. He preferred reading over social activities. He enjoyed thinking more than talking, and he spent long periods alone exploring ideas. Because of this, he sometimes felt isolated. Many people did not understand him. Some considered him unusual. Others believed he was too serious. But being different gave Albert an important advantage. It taught him how to think independently. He learned not to follow the crowd blindly. He learned not to accept ideas simply because everyone else believed them. Instead, he developed the habit of questioning assumptions. This habit would later allow him to challenge scientific beliefs that had existed for centuries. Sometimes greatness begins with the courage to think differently. Albert Einstein possessed that courage from an early age. Family challenges. While Albert's intellectual interests continued growing, his family faced financial difficulties. His father's business struggled, Money became increasingly scarce. The family eventually moved in search of better opportunities. These changes created uncertainty, and uncertainty often creates stress. For young Albert, life became more complicated. Yet these challenges also taught him resilience. He learned that success is rarely a straight path. He learned that setbacks are part of life, and he learned the importance of adapting to changing circumstances. These lessons would prove valuable in the years ahead. A new beginning in Switzerland. As he grew older, Albert's educational journey eventually brought him to Switzerland. This move would become one of the most important turning points in his life. Switzerland offered a different environment, a different educational system, and new opportunities. For the first time, Albert felt more comfortable expressing his ideas. He encountered teachers who encouraged independent thinking. He found an atmosphere that suited his personality better. His confidence began to grow. His academic performance improved. And his dream of becoming a scientist started feeling more realistic. For years, he had been the curious boy, asking endless questions. Now, he was becoming a young man, determined to find answers. The dream of understanding the universe. By the time Albert reached late adolescence, one thing had become clear. He wanted to dedicate his life to science, not for fame, not for money, but because he genuinely wanted to understand the universe. He wanted to uncover nature's secrets. He wanted to solve mysteries that had puzzled humanity for generations. His curiosity remained as powerful as ever, perhaps even stronger. Every book he read inspired new questions. Every scientific discovery sparked new ideas, and every challenge motivated him to learn more. The journey ahead would not be easy. There would be failures, there would be disappointments, there would be moments when success seemed impossible. But Albert Einstein possessed something incredibly powerful, an unstoppable desire to learn, and that desire was about to change the world forever, the beginning of an extraordinary journey. As the 19th century came to an end, Albert stood at the beginning of adulthood. He was no longer the quiet child fascinated by a compass. He was no longer the boy struggling to fit into traditional classrooms. He was becoming a thinker, a problem solver, a future scientist. The questions that had filled his mind since childhood were leading him toward something extraordinary, something revolutionary, something that would transform science forever. But before changing the world, Albert would face one of the most difficult periods of his life, a period filled with rejection, financial struggles, and uncertainty about the future. Yet those challenges would ultimately prepare him for greatness. The struggling graduate who changed science. Young man with big dreams. As Albert Einstein entered adulthood, he carried with him a powerful dream. He wanted to become a scientist. He wanted to explore the mysteries of the universe, and he wanted to contribute something meaningful to human knowledge. His curiosity had guided him throughout childhood, and now it was pushing him toward a future in physics. Albert enrolled at the Swiss Federal Polytechnic School in Zurich, one of the most respected institutions in Switzerland. For the first time, he found himself surrounded by students who shared his passion for science and mathematics. The experience was exciting, but it was also challenging. University demanded discipline, dedication, and hard work. Although Albert was brilliant, he still disliked strict rules and traditional teaching methods. He often preferred studying independently rather than attending every lecture. Instead of simply memorizing information, he spent hours thinking deeply about scientific problems. This habit sometimes created difficulties with professors. While some admired his intelligence, others believed he was too independent. Yet Albert remained focused on what mattered most to him: understanding the universe. The friendship that changed his life. During his years at university, Albert met several people who would influence his future. One of them was a fellow student named Mileva Maric. Mileva was intelligent, hard-working, and deeply interested in science. She shared many of Albert's academic interests. The two spent countless hours discussing physics, mathematics, and scientific ideas. Their friendship gradually grew stronger. They encouraged one another. They exchanged ideas. And together, they dreamed about future discoveries. At a time when very few women were studying science, Mileva's determination impressed Albert greatly. Their relationship would eventually become an important part of his personal life. But before that happened, Albert faced a major challenge: finding a job, graduation, and disappointment in 1900. Albert completed his studies and graduated. Like many young graduates, he expected to find employment quickly. He believed his education and abilities would open doors. Unfortunately, reality proved different. Again and again, Albert applied for teaching and research positions. Again and again, he was rejected. Universities showed little interest in hiring him. Some professors were unwilling to recommend him, others preferred candidates with stronger academic relationships. Months passed. Then more months, still no job. For a young man with big dreams, the situation was frustrating. Albert had talent, he had knowledge, he had ambition, yet opportunities seemed impossible to find. Financial pressures began increasing, and uncertainty about the future became a constant source of stress. Many people would have given up. Many would have accepted defeat. Albert refused. Life during hard times, the years following. Graduation was difficult. Albert took temporary jobs whenever he could find them. He worked as a tutor. He gave private lessons. He searched constantly for opportunities, but stable employment remained out of reach. Money was limited. The future was uncertain, and his dream of becoming a scientist seemed increasingly distant. Yet even during these difficult years, Albert never stopped thinking about physics. He never stopped asking questions, and he never stopped exploring scientific ideas. While others might have viewed unemployment as wasted time, Albert continued learning. He read scientific papers, he studied new theories, and he filled notebooks with thoughts and calculations. Without realizing it, he was preparing himself for something extraordinary. A job at the patent office in 1902. An opportunity finally appeared. Albert secured a position at the Swiss patent office in Bern. At first glance, the job seemed unrelated to scientific research. His responsibilities involved examining patent applications. He reviewed inventions and evaluated whether they were practical and original. Some people viewed the job as disappointing. After all, Albert had dreamed of becoming a university scientist. Now he was working in an office reviewing technical documents. But sometimes life's greatest opportunities arrive in unexpected forms. The CNC patent office provided something Albert desperately needed: financial stability. For the first time in years, he had a steady income. More importantly, the work left him enough free time to think, and Albert loved thinking. Every day after work, he continued exploring scientific questions. The patent office paid the bills, but his true passion remained physics. Thinking about time and space while working in Bern, Albert spent countless hours reflecting on some of the deepest mysteries in science. At the beginning of the 20th century, many scientists believed that physics was nearly complete. Most major questions seemed answered, yet Albert suspected otherwise. Certain ideas didn't make sense to him, particularly the relationship between time, space, and light. Again and again, he returned to the same question that had fascinated him since his teenage years. What would happen if someone could travel alongside a beam of light? The more he thought about it, the more he realized that existing theories contained contradictions. Something was missing. Something important. Albert became obsessed with solving the puzzle. And eventually, his persistence paid off. The miracle year, the year 1905, would become one of the most important years in the history of science. Albert Einstein was only 26 years old. was still working at the patent office. He was not a famous professor. He was not the head of a research institute. In fact, most scientists had never heard of him. Yet within a single year, he published several papers that would change physics forever. Historians now call 1905 Einstein's miracle year. It was a year that transformed an unknown patent clerk into one of the most influential thinkers in history. One paper explained the photoelectric effect. Another helped confirm the existence of atoms. The third introduced the special theory of relativity. And a fourth contained an equation that would become one of the most famous formulas ever written, E equals mc squared dot E, mc2, the birth of special relativity. The special theory of relativity challenged traditional ideas about time and space. For centuries, people assumed that time moved at the same rate for everyone. Albert showed that reality was far more surprising. According to his theory, time can move differently depending on speed. Objects moving at extremely high speeds experience time differently than stationary objects. This idea sounded unbelievable. Many people struggled to understand it. Some rejected it completely, but Einstein's mathematics supported his conclusions, and over time, experiments confirmed that he was correct. The theory revolutionized physics. It changed humanity's understanding of reality itself, and it marked the beginning of Einstein's rise to global fame. The meaning of E, mc2 among Einstein's discoveries. One equation became especially famous, E, mc2. Although the formula appears simple, its implications were profound. The equation demonstrated that mass and energy are connected. In other words, matter can be converted into energy, and energy can be converted into matter. The discovery revealed a hidden relationship within nature, a relationship nobody had fully understood before. Years later, this equation would influence technological developments and scientific research around the world. It became one of the most recognizable symbols of science, and it forever linked Albert Einstein's name with genius. Recognition begins at first. Einstein's papers attracted limited attention. Many scientists were cautious. His ideas seemed radical. Some researchers struggled to understand them, but others questioned whether they could possibly be true. But gradually, attitudes began changing. Scientists started examining his work more carefully. Experiments supported his conclusions, and respected physicists recognized the brilliance of his ideas. Slowly but surely, Einstein's reputation grew. The young man who had struggled to find employment was becoming one of the most important scientific voices of his generation. Universities that once ignored him now paid attention. Researchers discussed his theories. Students studied his papers, and the scientific world began realizing that something extraordinary had happened. A revolution in physics had begun. A new chapter begins by the end of the decade. Albert Einstein was no longer an unknown patent clerk. He had become a rising star in the scientific community. His ideas challenged established beliefs. His theories inspired debate, and his discoveries opened entirely new paths of research. Yet despite his growing success, Einstein remained curious. He remained humble, and he remained determined to understand the universe more deeply. In many ways, he was still the same boy who had stared at a compass and wondered about invisible forces. The questions had become more complex. The stakes had become higher, but the curiosity remained unchanged, and that curiosity was about to lead him toward even greater achievements. The world had noticed Albert Einstein. Soon, it would celebrate him as one of the greatest scientists who ever lived. Global fame, a lasting legacy, and the power of curiosity, from unknown scientist to global icon. By the early 20th century, Albert Einstein's name was becoming known within scientific circles. His revolutionary ideas had challenged traditional views of physics. Researchers across Europe were discussing his theories. Universities were inviting him to lecture, and scientists were beginning to realize that Einstein possessed a truly extraordinary mind. Yet despite his growing reputation, Einstein believed that his work was far from complete. There were still unanswered questions, there were still mysteries hidden within the universe, and there was one challenge in particular that captured his attention. He wanted to expand his theory of relativity. He wanted to understand gravity in a completely new way. Most scientists considered this problem incredibly difficult, but Einstein was never afraid of difficult problems. In fact, the more challenging a question seemed, the more determined he became to solve it. For years, he worked tirelessly. He filled notebooks with calculations. He tested ideas repeatedly. He explored possibilities that few others could even imagine. The work was exhausting. Sometimes progress seemed impossible. Sometimes months of effort produced no results. Yet Einstein refused to quit. His curiosity continued pushing him forward, and eventually his persistence would lead to another revolutionary breakthrough. The general theory of relativity. In 1915, after years of intense effort, Einstein introduced the general theory of relativity. Many scientists consider it one of the greatest intellectual achievements in human history. The theory completely transformed humanity's understanding of gravity. For centuries, people had relied on ideas developed by Isaac Newton. Newton's work had explained gravity remarkably well, but Einstein believed there was a deeper explanation. According to Einstein, gravity was not simply a force pulling objects together. Instead, massive objects like planets and stars actually bend the fabric of space and time. This concept sounded strange. Even many scientists struggled to understand it. But Einstein's mathematical calculations were incredibly powerful. His theory made predictions that could be tested through observation. If those predictions proved correct, the theory would change science forever. And that is exactly what happened. The moment the world took notice in 1919, a scientific expedition set out to test one of Einstein's predictions. The results were astonishing. The observations supported Einstein's theory. Suddenly, newspapers around the world began reporting on the brilliant scientist who had transformed humanity's understanding of the universe. Almost overnight, Albert Einstein became internationally famous. His face appeared on newspaper front pages. His name became known across continents. People who knew nothing about physics were suddenly talking about relativity. For Einstein, the attention was unexpected. He had spent years quietly studying scientific problems. Now he was one of the most famous people in the world. Yet despite the fame, he remained focused on learning and discovery. The recognition was gratifying, but curiosity remained his greatest motivation. A Nobel Prize and worldwide recognition. As Einstein's influence continued growing, his scientific contributions received increasing recognition. In 1921, he received the Nobel Prize in Physics. The award honored his contributions to physics, particularly his work related to the photoelectric effect. Winning the Nobel Prize represented one of the highest honors a scientist could achieve. It confirmed what many researchers already believed. Albert Einstein had become one of the most important scientific thinkers of his generation. Universities invited him to speak. Governments welcomed him, students admired him, and scientists studied his ideas. His influence extended far beyond physics. He became a symbol of intelligence, creativity, and independent thinking. Millions of people viewed him as living proof that curiosity could change the world. A changing world. As Einstein's fame increased, the world around him was changing rapidly. Political tensions were rising across Europe. New conflicts were emerging, and many nations were moving toward uncertainty. Einstein was not only concerned with science. He also cared deeply about humanity. He spoke openly about peace. He encouraged international cooperation, and he hoped that scientific progress could improve people's lives. Unfortunately, the world was entering a difficult period. As political conditions, Deteriorated in Germany, Einstein faced serious challenges. The environment became increasingly hostile. Eventually, he decided to leave Europe and seek safety elsewhere. This decision marked another major turning point in his life. A new life in America. Einstein eventually settled in the United States. There, he joined a research institution in Princeton, New Jersey. The move provided stability during a turbulent period. It also allowed him to continue his scientific work. Although he was already famous, Einstein remained dedicated to learning. He continued exploring questions about the universe. He continued writing papers, and he continued searching for deeper understanding. What impressed many people was his humility. Despite worldwide recognition, he rarely behaved like a celebrity. He preferred simple living, he valued knowledge over status, and he remained genuinely curious about the world around him. His passion for discovery never disappeared. Even as he grew older, he continued asking questions. The same curiosity that had guided him as a child remained alive throughout his life. More than a scientist, Albert Einstein's impact extended far beyond science. His ideas influenced philosophy, technology, education, and culture. His name became synonymous with intelligence. But perhaps his greatest contribution was not a specific equation or theory. Perhaps it was the example he set. Einstein showed that questioning accepted ideas can lead to extraordinary discoveries. He demonstrated the value of independent thinking, and he reminded people that curiosity is one of humanity's most powerful tools. Throughout his life, he encouraged others to think creatively. He encouraged students to ask questions, and he believed that imagination was just as important as knowledge. This message continues inspiring people around the world today. The final years. As Einstein entered the later years of his life, he remained committed to science. He continued researching complex problems, he continued writing and teaching, and he continued searching for deeper understanding. Although many of his greatest discoveries were already behind him, his passion for learning never faded. He remained fascinated by the mysteries of the universe. Even when problems seemed impossible to solve, he kept trying. That persistence became one of his defining qualities. Albert Einstein passed away on April 18, 1955. He was 76 years old. The world mourned the loss of one of its greatest thinkers. Yet his ideas did not disappear. His theories continued influencing scientific research, his discoveries continued shaping modern technology, and his legacy continued inspiring future generations. In many ways, his journey had only begun, because the impact of his work would continue long after his lifetime. The lessons we can learn. Albert Einstein's story offers valuable lessons for everyone, not just scientists, everyone. Lesson 1. Never stop asking questions. Einstein's success began with curiosity. He constantly asked questions about the world around him. Many of those questions seemed unusual, some seemed impossible, yet they eventually led to revolutionary discoveries. Curiosity is often the first step toward greatness. Lesson 2. Think for yourself. Einstein did not simply accept ideas because others believed them. He examined them carefully, he questioned assumptions, and he searched for deeper understanding. Independent thinking allowed him to see possibilities others overlooked. Lesson 3. Failure is not the end. Einstein struggled to find employment after graduation. He faced rejection, he experienced uncertainty, yet he refused to give up. Temporary setbacks do not define your future. Persistence matters far more. Lesson 4. Imagination has power. Einstein often relied on thought experiments. He imagined situations that seemed impossible. These exercises helped him develop some of the most important scientific theories ever created. Creativity and imagination are powerful tools. Never underestimate them. Lesson 5. Stay curious for life. Even after becoming famous, Einstein continued learning. He continued exploring. He continued asking questions. True growth never ends. The moment we stop learning is the moment we stop progressing. The legacy of Albert Einstein today. Albert Einstein remains one of the most recognized figures in history. His theories transformed modern physics. His discoveries changed humanity's understanding of reality, and his ideas continue influencing science, technology, and education. Students study his work. Scientists build upon his discoveries, and people around the world draw inspiration from his story. Yet perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Einstein's journey is this. He was not driven by fame. He was not driven by wealth. He was driven by curiosity. Simple desire to understand the universe. That desire changed the world. And it reminds us that extraordinary achievements often begin with simple questions asked by people who dare to think differently, people like Albert Einstein. And that brings us to the end of Albert Einstein's incredible story, from a curious young boy fascinated by compass to one of the greatest scientific minds in human history. His journey reminds us that intelligence is not about knowing all the answers. It is about having the courage to ask meaningful questions. Einstein's life teaches us that curiosity can open doors to extraordinary discoveries, that persistence can overcome setbacks, and that independent thinking can change the world, no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, and no matter what challenges you face. Never stop learning, never stop questioning, and never stop believing in the power of your own ideas. We hope you enjoyed this inspiring story and improved your English listening skills along the way. If you found this story helpful, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to English Orbit, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next inspiring English learning story. Thank you for listening. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep exploring the world with curiosity. Until next time, this is English Orbit, helping you learn English through powerful stories, one journey at a time. See you in the next video.